And the fact that our government is actively trying to make it, probably already has it. I should not play this, but I'm going to download it. I didn't know that they had firsthand accounts. The government is literally like kidnapping people and doing mind control experiments on them. I wanted to jump back into conspiracy theories this week, and I specifically wanted to find one that was proven to be true. I'm pretty sure we've all heard stories of the government, music artists, and movies, and like the entertainment industry trying to control our minds with subliminal messages and stuff like that. And a lot of the times it's come to be true where there will be like product placement or things like that. Well, it's not necessarily like harmful mind control or anything, but subliminal messages do exist. I'm sure you guys have heard that if you play certain records backwards, you get a secret message and from the devil, and like it's wild. But there was one project from the government called MK Ultra that was proven to be true. Then that led me down this rabbit hole of a game. The game is called Polybius. I believe that's how you say it. It is essentially a game. It was an arcade cabinet, okay, back in the early 80s that was put in arcades and was said to be another government like project directed to control the minds of the youth or gamers and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, this sounds incredible. But I want to give you guys just a little bit of insight on MK Ultra, okay? And how this whole mind control conspiracy theory like came to be. So during the early period of the Cold War, the CIA became convinced that communists had discovered a drug or technique that would allow them to control human minds. In response, the CIA began its own secret program called MK Ultra. MK Ultra, which operated from the 1950s until the early 60s, was created and run by a chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. Journalist Stephen Kinzer, who spent several years investigating the program, calls the operation the most sustained search in history for techniques of mind control. Many of his unwitting subjects endured psychological torture ranging from electroshock to high doses of LSD, according to Kinzer's research. Gottlieb wanted to create a way to seize control of people's minds, and he realized it was a two-part process. First, you had to blast away the existing mind. Second, you had to find a way to insert a new mind into that resulting void. We didn't get too far on number 2, but he did a lot of work on number 1. We don't know how many people died, but a number did, and many lives were permanently destroyed, he says. Concluded that mind control was not possible. After MK Ultra shut down, he went to lead a CIA program that created poisons and high-tech gadgets for spies to use. It was a real program that the government thought that they could utilize to help them win the Cold War. They thought that their enemies were using it and that they needed to have it in their back pocket. Imagine living in this era in the early 1950s and 1960s and being like, yeah, the government is literally like kidnapping people and doing mind control experiments on them. That is out of a fucking sci-fi movie. As part of the search for drugs that would allow people to control the human mind, CIA scientists became aware of the existence of LSD, and this became an obsession for the early directors of MK Ultra. Actually, the MK Ultra director, Sidney Gottlieb, can now be seen as the man who brought LSD to America. In the early 1950s, he arranged for the CIA to pay $240,000 to buy the world's entire supply of LSD. This is real? He brought this to the United States and he began spreading it around to hospitals, clinics, prisons, and other institutions, asking them through bogus foundations to carry out research projects and find out what LSD was, how people reacted to it, and how it might be able to be used as a tool for mind control. Now, the people who volunteered for these experiments and began taking LSD in many cases found it very pleasurable. They told their friends about it. Who were those people? Ken Kesey. So did Robert Hunter, the lyricist for the Grateful Dead, which went on to become a great purveyor of LSD culture. Allen Ginsberg, the poet who preached the value of the great personal adventure of using LSD, got his first LSD from Sidney Gottlieb, although, of course, he never knew that name. That's crazy. Holy shit. These are names that I know, I recognize. Allen Ginsberg, Grateful Dead. I don't know Robert Hunter specifically, but I know who the Grateful Dead is. Whitey Bulger was one of the prisoners who volunteered for what he was told was an experiment aimed at finding a cure for schizophrenia. As part of the experiment, he was given LSD every day for more than a year. He later realized that this had nothing to do with schizophrenia, and he was a guinea pig in a government experiment aimed at seeing what people's long-term reaction to LSD was. Essentially, could we make a person lose his mind by feeding him LSD every day over such a long period? Bulger wrote afterward about his experience, which he described as quite horrific. He thought he was going insane. He wrote, "I was in prison for committing a crime, but they committed a greater crime on me." And towards the end of his life, Bulger came to realize the truth of what had happened to him. And he actually told his friends that he was going to find that doctor in Atlanta who was the head of that experiment program in the penitentiary and go kill him. Holy shit. Dude, the deceit there is, I don't know who, I don't know what Whitey did. We're gonna watch this video and hopefully it wraps it up in a nice neat bow for us.
And what did Dr. Sidney Gottlieb believe was the best way to blast away the existing mind?
Drugs!
A drug called LSD.
Woo! Not real drugs, chat. Not real drugs. Sorry, it's not real drugs. It's not real drugs. It's just a depiction of drugs. It's not real drugs.
Information on the project remained in some 8,000 pages of financial documents that were accidentally left over.
Wow! Wow! Are you serious? So they were like, scrub this shit from history. It never happened. And then because some fucking bastard in accounting, I'm sorry for calling them a bastard because they're the only reason we learned that this was real and it actually happened, forgot to scrub the $240,000 of LSD from the CIA's files. Holy shit.
On November 28, 1953, government scientist Frank Olson jumped from, or was pushed, from a high-level window at the Hotel Statler in New York City.
Jesus.
The fall killed him, and the CIA claimed he jumped from the window, committing suicide due to work-related stress. In his life, Olson was recruited to work for the Army's biological lab in 1950 to develop aerosol weapons that could be transmitted through air particles. During visits to warfare research centers in
Equally as horrifying, this dude's job. I know that type of stuff like exists. I don't like thinking about it. Having a biological weapon in the form of hairspray, and the fact that our government is actively trying to make it, probably already has it.
In 1994, Frank Olson's son had his father's body exhumed. A new investigation showed that Frank Olson had suffered a blow to the head before falling to his death, but a New York District Attorney investigation showed inconclusive results. The family reached a settlement with the U.S. government.
Holy fuck!
While so little of what actually went on as part of the MKUltra experiment is known today, the experiments have become intertwined with pop culture. This secret Cold War government experiment known as MKUltra has resulted in effects that have been seen by a lot more people than will ever know the project existed.
And it would not shock me if shit like that was still going on. We're going to jump into something that might hit home for us as gamers, but is said, some people believe it to be a part of the MKUltra experiment, kind of like what came of it. Polybius, the most dangerous arcade game in the world. In the fall of 1981, a mysterious video game suddenly appeared in arcades around Portland. The game, a black box with no name that involved geometric patterns and colorful shapes, was instantly addictive, hypnotic, and in some cases, dangerous. Two teenagers supposedly disappeared after playing. Mysterious men in black suits periodically came to service it. Was it a secret government research program using gamers as unwitting guinea pigs? Was it a part of the CIA's MKUltra mind control program? Polybius was the name players later gave to the game, borrowing the name of Greek historian famous relying on first-hand accounts. Oh, this is more about the podcast than Polybius in general. Bobby Feldstein claims he was abducted one afternoon when he was 14 after playing the game at Coin Kingdom and experiencing mind-altering side effects. In the podcast's first episode, Feldstein tells producers he was led through a series of underground tunnels akin to the tunnels of Portland's Shanghai lore, and was found the next day more than 60 miles from his house in the middle of Tillamook State Forest. Feldstein claims there was another boy with him, one who was rescued him. Feldstein gives for-profit Polybius walking tours around Portland that attempt to authenticate his experience by returning to the former basement of Coin Kingdom. He claims the ordeal of the abduction ruined his life, telling the podcast audience doing the tour is a way to exercise my demons on a daily basis. What? I didn't know that they had firsthand accounts and that there's people that actually exist now that will give you a tour of his kidnapping. Huge shout out to Ahoy. This video is, we're literally about to watch a documentary on this.
Let me take you back to 1981.
Good old Portland.
Back when arcade games were at their peak. In an unnamed arcade in some sleepy suburb of Portland, there lurked something more obscure. A limited release of a game that would evaporate as silently as it appeared. The only concrete details are the name, year of release, and the company behind it. Really, it was just like any other arcade machine, except for the side effects. Reports of sickness, amnesia, night terrors, and behavioral changes followed those who played it. It was no accident either, if you believe the rumors. Instead, a secret project by government agency, developed from military tech for the CIA or some other men in black.
Okay. A little far-fetched off rip, right? It seems a little sketchy, but hear me out. I could literally paint a similar image for League of Legends. People who play League of Legends are very irritable. They neglect to take responsibility for their actions. Usually finish sessions feeling sickly, worn down. You know, I could literally paint this image, and then like, dude, imagine some document from Riot Games gets released, and they're like, we're attempting to mind control the youth. Not so far-fetched anymore, is it?
The machines were observed, gameplay records were taken, and then, after a month or so, they disappeared without notice, along with any shred of evidence. Another word consistent to the myth is the supposed developer or publisher, Zinnis Lotion.
I haven't heard of that.
Word. Almost. A not quite grammatical combination of Zinne, meaning sense, and lotion, meaning to erase. To erase senses.
No way.
Become senseless.
Hold on.
There isn't much visual evidence for the game, and most can be discounted as fake. But there is one screenshot that is consistently upheld as canon.
Okay, give it to me. Wait, that's it?
It's rather basic. A black background with a Polybius logo, copyright information, and credits. And nothing else. If you had the ROMs and were able to take screenshots of a functioning game, why not show it in motion?
If this was a government mind control experiment, and they were the only ones who had access to the actual cabinets, it would be very easy to remove them.
There have been multiple people who claim to hold the Polybius ROMs, and yet there's no sign of them anywhere.
ROM file for Polybius has been located. While the Polybius file will not operate in MAME, it does have its own emulation program. Polybius ROM is embedded within the file, so simply download the program and run the executable. Warning. Be sure to familiarize yourself with Polybius, as it is known to have severe results for past users. GDG recommends that you read the following Polybius article. Make absolutely certain that you wish to run the program. Imagine just being some kid in like the late 90s and coming, like, looking for video games to download, coming across this and being like, I should not play this, but I'm going to download it.
With a spooky icon, it's clearly supposed to evoke the myth. And those who are brave enough to run it are given a warning. The Polybius video game has been linked to impaired memory and psychological changes. Gameplay may cause epileptic seizures in susceptible individuals. Do you still want to continue? Click OK, and you'll be met with the familiar title screen, reformatted for a 4:3 monitor.
Already we're getting flashing lights and we're talking about video games and stuff like that, chat. Just want to give a quick epileptic warning.
With the logo rapidly flashing while a sound effect plays. A sequence of rising tones. The flashing continues until you press a key. And then, nothing. The game exits with a fatal error and a message box that reads, April Fools.
What a bitch, bro. That would piss me off.
So we can write that one
off. That
would
piss me off, dude.
But there is another game that has become the dominant example when searching for Polybius gameplay. It came from a site at zinneslotion.com, the supposed developers of the original. But the site explains that it's just a fan-made attempt to recreate what might have been. A familiar logo appears, but this is no mere prank. There's an actual game amidst all the spooky theatrics. The gameplay is admittedly simple, giving you control of a ship that can move in, out, or rotate the playfield.
I mean, this is just like a fan-made thing, though.
Cracking open the executable's resources reveals the game was made in Dark Basic. Using a more specialized tool called Dark Explorer, we can reveal all of the game's assets, graphics, sound effects, etc. All of these subliminal aspects are laid bare.
Normal, no
A
thought.
variety of messages written in dark gray.
Hey, yo.
During gameplay. Obey, consume,
That's,
submit.
bro, that, even as like a fan-made thing, that's still sketchy as fuck. Like, the color scheme makes me believe that it would like just flash during like normal gameplay, so you wouldn't see any of these, but they're just like subliminal messages. Obey, consume, submit. What the? If you got somebody who works in an arcade system and there was like one arcade cabinet that was brought in for a couple of months and then taken away, it probably wouldn't ring a bell. But there's got to be somebody who worked at that specific arcade that would have some sort of recollection of weird shit happening. I want to interview them.
Well, there are some who claim they have. The videos all follow a familiar pattern. A shaky camera led by rumors of Arcade Hall, to the reveal, a dark cabinet bearing a familiar name. Some even feature gameplay. Normally it's just the Rogue Synapse version, but sometimes it's something original. And then, just as things are getting interesting, what was that?
Stop it.
Roll
Stop
credits.
it, bro. They're making it not believable.
Only one Polybius cabinet is unaccounted for. A low-resolution black and white photo that appears on the killer list of video games entry for Polybius. So it could be a custom build, repainted and assembled from spares, or even built from scratch.
Or it's just a
There's
real
also the
machine.
very real possibility that it's simply a Photoshop.
Oh.
The Polybius marquee could have been applied directly from the
I thought there's a very real possibility that it's real. He said that it's photoshopped. Okay.
screenshot. The low resolution and lack of color make detecting a fake difficult, and I suspect it's deliberate. An original photo of a custom cabinet, perhaps, but it seems altered to fit the myth. One testimony comes from an anonymous source who claims Polybius was associated with Sega's arcade division. He's known only as PRG-017.
This game is real. I was a programmer.
I was
in
reading the
Sega's
captions,
arcade
dog.
division.
They play the myth straight, insisting that their secret project was designed to stimulate specific parts of the human brain, with testers suffering amnesia and loss of arcade game fandom. The most prominent claimant of responsibility is a man named Stephen Roach, who, in a series of posts in early 2006, claimed to be one of the original programmers of Polybius.
Oh, let's go, baby.
I think it's about time I lay this to rest. My name is Stephen Roach. Zinneslotion was a company set up by myself and several other amateur programmers in 1978.
He says he's primarily based in the Czech Republic, where he set up a company called Zinneslotion with several mainly amateur programmers that worked on component parts for PCBs, with programming as a limited but very profitable sideline. The original claims were made on a few different sites, but Roach was most active on the Retro Gamer forums, where there are a number of follow-up posts. The thread goes on for several pages. A few suspiciously new accounts are quite active. It seems someone might have been using sock puppets to fuel discussion. Later, a moderator confirms that several names are posting from the same IP, and Stephen Roach is amongst them. Most of these accounts were created specifically for the ruse.
I love that people are out here doing investigating and, you know, beating out hoaxes and stuff. Just let me believe, bro. Just lie to me.
I originally said that I received no reply from Stephen Roach via email. And this was true at the time of writing, and up until a few days after I sent this tweet. As if by magic, 2.5 months after sending the original email, he finally gets back to me. So I addressed him by his real name. I said, perhaps it's time to retire the Stephen Roach.
Damn, bro!
It was a long shot, and it didn't work. He kept up the pretense. Even in the face of the evidence I had, he wasn't going to give it up. Let there be no doubt. Stephen Roach is a red herring.
Oh.
And his story, entirely fabricated.
Why? My man is willing to go the extra mile to like still like years later get called out on his personal Twitter account and be like, nah, dog, I have no idea what you're talking about. That sounds crazy. Are you trying to sell me something? Back the fuck up. And then in email form, ask Steven, bro, I might reach out. I might reach out to Steven.
At the time, GamePro was the world's largest independent multi-platform gaming magazine and claimed to be read by over 3 million gamers a month. In issue 180, cover date September 2003, although published some weeks earlier, there was an article called Secrets and Lies. Polybius was number 6.
Hey, yo.
The article expressed doubts over the game's veracity, citing a lack of evidence and the relative ease of fabrication, but it ultimately awards an inconclusive. Polybius's activity pre-GamePro was much more subdued, but even in early 2003, the game was still well known to arcade enthusiasts.
Who made
Sometime
it?
Shortly before February the 15th, 2003, an article on Polybius appeared on GoodDealGames.com. Most interestingly, at the bottom of the article, there is a small banner with special thanks to a site called coinop.org. It seems they've had a page on Polybius longer than anybody else. At the bottom of the page is a creation date, the 3rd of August, 1998, our earliest yet. But is it verifiable? 2000.
Bro, how Ahoy managed to find all
The entire
this?
site moved domain.
I
around
wouldn't even
this
know where to
time.
begin.
While it originally started on coinop.org, at some point during 1999, it was incorporated into click2.com, first as a subdomain, then later as a subdirectory. Interestingly, the creation date of 1998 is missing, as is the screenshot. However, there is a last modified date instead, given as the 6th of February 2000, along with a note. New edition, anyone heard of this game? This seems to imply that the 6th of February is the date the page was added. I mean, it says new edition. So why does the page today insist that it was created in 1998?
I'm pretty sure the way this is broken down so far, I'm pretty sure he's about to get into it. But it is absolutely fascinating to me that in the year 2000, so 22 years ago, somebody could have created a fake page about a fake video game with some lore when the internet wasn't even used that heavily back then, okay? And it has found its way 20 years later to my Twitch stream and the internet as a whole as this huge conspiracy theory. Just one page, one story, no publicity, and it managed to make the rounds and survive this long. It blows my mind.
A capture from April 29th, 2003 lacks the page created date. The next capture has it. This means it was added between these two dates. The date might have been recorded before this, but not displayed. But another possibility is that the date created field was made later on and populated with a default value. I suspect the latter case is true, principally because almost all the other game pages share the same creation date, down to the 4 AM time. It is possible that Polybius was present in the database back then, but there's absolutely no evidence for it. What we do have is a verified capture from early 2000 with a date of February the 6th and a claim of a new edition.
So
I have
2000.
nothing earlier in my timeline.
Oh boy.
This could be our origin point. Day 0, the day the myth started.
Dude, I used to make web pages. I used to love to random bullshit. Pictures of Dragon Ball Z characters in fucking like history of Dragon Ball Z and the NBA. I had two loves, okay? Somebody did that with this game and it has spanned the test of time and is now more relevant than ever, I would say.
One of the first instances of the word was posted.
Oh my god, it's happening.
2000, just a couple of months after the game first appeared on coinop.org. Posted by a user named NYMechanicalBR08, it links to coinop.org, a reply to a request for information on an obscure German video game, which triggered an association. The OP of this particular thread is a German fellow named Christian Windler, also known as Cyber Yogi, but we'll get to him later.
Oh my god, it's happening, chat.
On the 27th of February 2000, just 3 weeks after it was first posted to coinop.org, a user named Zub posted a link on Polybius' page on click2.com. No, not the Greek historian. An arcade game, he says. I am skeptical of the claims made on the following page, but they certainly make for interesting reading. But with no trace of prior evidence, we can only presume coinop.org is where the story began.
So who was the author of this?
Whoever posted it there
might
be responsible for everything.
Okay, hey, officer, right here.
The coinop.org domain has been around since 1993, although the earliest page capture dates back to late 1996, approaching the limit of the Wayback Machine. Back then, the domain was home to the Virtual Coinop Museum, run by Stephen W. Reiner. It was a collection of photographs and articles relating to arcade machines. However, in 1998, Stephen offered the coinop.org domain to the users of the RGVAC news group. He didn't have the time to maintain it, and so sought someone who could make better use of it. He ended up giving the domain to a web developer named Kurt Koller. By August 1998, Kurt had taken ownership of the domain and had relaunched the site as a games database. In April 1999, he moved the site to a subdomain of click2.com. And, interestingly, he mentions the addition of a German language version. So, who provided the information for the site?
Thank you. Let's go. Because right now, the coinop.org thing just seems like a normal, mundane log of video games.
Coinop.org has always had an open call for contributions.
Okay.
The presented entries for games are manually curated and incorporated into the database, presumably by Kurt. He had exact control over what appeared on the site, and he's always had that control.
All right, Kurt.
So perhaps he received a tip about Polybius. Perhaps someone emailed him the description and he reproduced it in good faith. Maybe, but if his intent was to maintain an accurate list of games, why would he keep the text unaltered if most of his arcade collecting peers were quickly prepared to write it off as a hoax? Why would he update the entry in 2009, promising more information? Stay tuned. Information which has yet to transpire. Finally, remember the GamePro article? The one that exposed Polybius to a mainstream gaming audience and is perhaps the single largest factor in the legend's persistence today? I spoke to the author of that article, Dan Amrich, and asked him where he first found out about Polybius.
Dude, let's go.
Kurt was the person who first tipped me off about
Kurt,
Polybius.
You son of a bitch, you played me, didn't you?
I thought about it for a long time, and ultimately I came to the conclusion some years ago that Kurt was probably just making all of this up and pulling the wool over my eyes, and he sent it in as a tip to see if I would bite, and obviously I bit.
Damn it, dude!
My job.
Everything pointed towards Kurt.
You son of a bitch,
He was
Kurt.
Coinop.org, and thus responsible for the earliest confirmed emergence of the myth. As an arcade enthusiast, he would have been familiar with the games from Polybius' era. In fact, he owned some of them. As a web developer, he would have had the necessary skills to forge a convincing-looking screenshot.
No! No, Kurt!
Had at least some familiarity with the German language, but he wasn't fluent, hence Sinneslotion. He's no stranger to internet fame either. He's the one behind the Taco Bell $2 bill refusal story under the Usenet pseudonym Captain Sarcastic. Finally, he had a motive. He wanted to drive traffic to coinup.org. And when he sent a tip-off to GamePro magazine, it paid off and immortalized the legend.
My God.
In any case, to uncover the truth, I was going to have to speak to him. So, I
Kurt's a fucking genius, dude. He is a PR god, okay? He needs to be on. He honestly, if you told me right now that Kurt ran Wendy's Twitter account, I would believe you. If this comes out to be true, that Kurt was just like, haha, I needed to drive traffic to my website, so I created this fake video game that murdered children, then who is the kid? Bro, I'm taking that tour.
I asked him directly, were you responsible for the game's addition to the site? If not, who was the source?
Let's
Where
go.
did the screenshot come from?
Yup.
His answers
You
weren't helpful.
bastard.
He insisted the game was present on the site since day one, the 3rd of August 1998, despite the contradicting evidence. He went on, the entry's wording on coinup.org is very specific. That's all I'm allowed to comment on.
What do you mean allowed to?
I didn't expect a confession, but it was clear he wasn't going to let me ruin his fun without some resistance.
Let's just beat him up. Just kidding, Kurt.
By this point, I was almost certain he was behind the Polybius myth. He was, at the very least, complicit. So he was definitely hiding something.
Does he have a Twitter?
But what did he mean by very specific wording? My mind was cast back to the connection between Polybius and cryptology. The Polybius square. Could the very specific wording of the Polybius entry be hiding something? A coded message? At this point, I'm not even sure. It could just be me reading between the lines.
I don't think this is him.
A wild goose chase. But I suppose it's worth a try. Rereading the text, I noticed some unusual things. The writing is odd, with rather too many commas, and some peculiar wording choices. There's also a spelling mistake, disappeared with a missing E, which is not necessarily unusual, but it has gone untouched for 17 years. Maybe he never noticed it, but he did notice a spelling mistake on the Polybius Wikipedia article. There's an edit by a Kurt S. Koller made on the 27th of October 2005, where he corrects the spelling of non-existent.
You got your ass, Kurt.
Maybe the spelling is intentional. But what does that mean? Perhaps word length is a factor. Perhaps his code needed a 10-letter word and nothing else would fit. Despite my suspicions, my attempts to decipher a message that may or may not exist were fruitless. Besides, code breaking was outside the scope of my intention. We already had an origin, and we had a likely suspect. Maybe I was hoping for something more. A man inspired saw opportunity and hatched a plan. A sprinkling of detail, touch of paranoid nerve, and a mysterious screenshot, and you're ready to serve. It wasn't enough for collectors well seasoned. Most were quite cynical, and with good reason. As the tale almost stalled, a new trick was needed. A magazine tip-off ensured exposure was seeded.
Wow.
An explosion of interest, and any doubt drowned. Curious waves of the gullible inbound. By now, the story was simply too big to kill. Inscribed in folklore, echoed in forum posts still. An in-joke for arcade fans of spooky illusion. And for low-effort listicles, an essential inclusion. An indelible myth, but at least we know the deal. Polybius never existed, but the legend is real.
I didn't think that it was a real thing going into it, right? But after learning about MK Ultra and more about that and actual like experiments ran on humans, it seemed at least plausible, right? And so I was very curious about it. Still not expecting. I think what we did learn is more fascinating than having learned that it's not a government mind control conspiracy. I think that was really cool. And honestly, despite it not being a thing that actually existed that made kids sick and it controlled the minds of the youth, I think the story that we did uncover was equally as entertaining. Well, other than that, thank you so much for stopping by.